okay, so now we've picked this area and we've said, okay, this is broken. Now tell me, are you being a victim or are you being a hero?
Right.
Are you pressing back, or are you just kind of shrugging your shoulders and go, yeah, this part of my life kind of sucks?
Yeah, just taking it.
And yeah, I'm just going to take
Accept
accept it. And then if you are being a hero, but you're pressing and you're not winning.
Right.
Like that was me in my physical fire for a long time. Like
Right.
I felt like I was trying these things. I just wasn't winning. Then the question is, where's your guide?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because guides exist to help heroes get past the difficult circumstances. So if you are being a hero, if you are having agency and you're not winning, where do we need to go find you a guide in that specific space?
I love that.
Welcome to the Four Fires Podcast, where we talk about winning in all four of the essential areas of life.
Well, welcome to another episode of the Four Fires Podcast. My name is Alan Kemper, and I am here with Justin Lambert today, and we're going to dig into topics around the professional fire. Welcome, Justin.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Hey, so you and I, whenever we get together, don't ever have a shortage of words, but I wanted to talk a little bit today about owner mentality versus employee mentality. And it's not, and maybe employee mentality. I don't want to like
put in a negative
term, but there is just a different mentality about people who are going to own their business or own their physical life. So what does that mean to you? When you say that, what do you mean?
When I think about those two things, or you know, the two different thought processes there. It boils down to one thing for me, and it's excuses. It's sort of how you handle adversity. Is it an excuse, or is it something that you can, fight through and overcome? And to me, that sort of defines the difference in an employee mentality versus an owner mentality. An owner is going to realize that it's their responsibility. It's their obstacle to overcome, and you when you turn over your shoulder to look for someone else to solve that problem for you, there is no one, and so it's you, and so how you handle that sort of defines, I feel like, whether or not you're gonna succeed or fail at whatever problem that you're facing at that moment. And to me, entrepreneurship magnifies that for you, and it just puts it right out there in front of you that this is yours. Like, you're either going to pass or fail, and it's completely up to you.
Yeah, and it's interesting because in the business world, it really is. And you have a scoreboard.
That's exactly right.
Like, that can completely quantify, were you passive or were you active? Mm-hmm. The first time I ever heard you use that term, we were actually going through the ruck together, and one of our friends, David, we had agreed that we were going to do all these different activities and abstentions, and our friend David was going on a cruise in the middle of the ruck. And one of the things that we had agreed upon that we would do every week was to do a physical ruck, where we were going to put weight on our backs. And that we were going to go for a walk. And he went on this cruise, and we were going, how's he going to do it? You know, like he hadn't told us what we were going to do.
That's right.
And you made some kind of, we were joking about, well, maybe he just won't do it. And you
I did not let him off the hook. Well, to preface that, though, when we first had our kickoff meeting about it, and sort of our approach as a group, how we're going to handle this, and if we, can somebody miss one thing? And David was an advocate of, no, if you miss one thing, you're out.
Yep.
He was the head leader in that conversation. And so it was funny, the very first time when we started doing it, the very first time that he hit a roadblock, and because he couldn't ruck or something, we had to carry your weighted vest.
Yeah.
And I was like, you pick your kid up and walk around that cruise ship, or put a backpack on, or carry a suitcase or whatever. And I was like, you're gonna do it.
Yeah, and he did, right?
And he did, yeah.
But I think sometimes it's that.
That's a perfect example, because you could easily have said, I didn't bring my weighted vest, so I can't do my ruck. Mm-hmm. Versus, I'm going to find a solution to this problem. I'm going to solve this problem, even though it may be unorthodox.
Yep. And I think what he came up with was he took one of their backpacks, their family backpacks, stuffed it with as much weight as he could get.
That's right.
And carried his kid on his shoulders.
Put his kid on his shoulders and walked around the
boat.
cruise. Yep.
And got his miles in.
Yep.
And like that's that I said I was going to.
That's right. I will find a way to win.
Find a way.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree.
You run a company that does online retail, and I remember another example you gave me of like the internet went out.
Yes.
And unpack that idea.
This was a classic example to me of the employee versus the ownership mentality. So in our business, we have sort of a routine of how we market to people, and we send an email every morning, and people just expect that email to come. We launch new products every single day, and so people get in the pattern of opening that email and seeing those new products. And if you sort of skip that, people will start looking at other places, and their attention will be focused elsewhere instead of on you. And so I remember we ran into a situation one time where the internet was out in our building, and so we're supposed to get the email out, and the person in charge of getting the email out basically said, well, the internet's out, so I can't send the email. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, this is one of the most important pieces of the business, and you're telling me just because the internet's out in this building, you can't send an email? Like, you can drive to Starbucks, you can go to free Wi-Fi.
Public
you can
library.
turn your phone onto a hotspot. You can go to the public library. Like, you can find a way to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
And if we always send it at 9 a.m. Well, it's 9:45. Why didn't you send it? And then it's an excuse why we didn't send it. Well, then that still doesn't mean you can't go send it now. Like, just because it's 9:45, let's get it out there. Let's get it out there. We're not going to scratch it and go to the next day. And I feel like that's sort of the employee versus owner mentality is. You're taking ownership of the problem, and you've said you're going to do this certain thing, and you're not going to let anything stop you from getting it done. Mm-hmm. You will find a way to overcome any barrier that comes in your way. And I feel like, I don't want to I feel like we're putting a negative connotation on employee versus the ownership, but it's basically like employee in my mind is like deferral. Mm-hmm. of a problem or an excuse or a barrier. You're going to defer that to someone else.
Yeah.
And the owner mentality is I'm going to own whatever's in front of me, and that barrier is something that I am going to overcome. But I may use an unorthodox way.
Let me throw out a word that I've been thinking a lot about recently, and the word is agency. So do you believe that you have agency in your own life? And so agency is the ability to affect change. Mm-hmm. I've been reading through a book, Donald Miller's book, Hero on a Mission. And this is really fascinating to me. He says that in every great story, there are 4 primary characters. Whether you're talking about, all of the fairy tales, Star Wars, and all stories, there's basically just 4 characters. He said there are victims, and victims are people who the circumstances of life are difficult, and external forces are repressing them and holding them down. So you have victims. You have villains, and I think the core of a villain is they make other people feel small. And then he says there are heroes, and he says heroes are people who the external circumstances of life are repressing them and holding them down. And they've chosen to press back against those obstacles. Mm-hmm. And then there are guides. And guides are people who help heroes overcome the obstacles in their life.
Wow.
What stuck out to me about that, and I think he highlights this in his book, is that the only real difference between a victim and a hero is agency, is this choice to press back mm-hmm. and say, no, we're not going to let the internet be out.
Right.
No, I'm not going to let circumstances dictate that I can't do a ruck. I'm going to choose to have agency and be active, and that's the difference between a victim and a hero.
Yep.
And so one of the things that's been interesting, I've actually been using this in a lot of my executive coaching conversations recently, is where in your life do you feel like something is broken? Mm-hmm. Like, is it your physical fire? Is it your purpose fire? Whatever it is. Okay, so now we've picked this area and we've said, okay, this is broken. Now tell me, Are you being a victim or are you being a hero?
Right.
Are you pressing back or are you just kind of shrugging your shoulders and go, yeah, this part of my life kind of sucks.
Yeah, just taking it.
And yeah, I'm just going to take
Accept it.
accept it. And then if you are being a hero, but you're pressing and you're not winning.
Right.
Like that was me in my physical fire for a long time. Like
Right.
I felt like I was trying these things. I just wasn't winning. Then the question is, where's your guide?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because guides exist to help heroes get past the difficult circumstances. So if you are being a hero, if you are having agency and you're not winning, where do we need to go find you a guide in that specific space?
I love that.
But maybe that's a little, I mean, the owner employee mentality, maybe that's some of like victim hero language. But I
Right.
think maybe the core commonality there is this idea of agency.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I guess the question for me, it's easy to say, oh, in my business space, of course, I take ownership.
Right.
Where is it that I'm being lame? Where am I being? Where am
Well,
I
and
not
I think
taking agency?
to me, the success for entrepreneurs or just in life in general, it's not necessarily just being a hero or a victim on a macro level. Mm-hmm. It's more about the micro level to me. Like, there's one small little area of your physical fire where you are using that as an excuse, or you're not taking ownership that you can change that little piece. Because to me, and that's one of the things we talk about a lot in our companies, is success comes from doing a lot of very small things right. Mm-hmm. Not just on a macro level of, I'm an entrepreneur and I have this company and I own that I make all these changes or whatever. But it's just the little bitty things that you're doing, just like that internet being out. Mm-hmm. That's on a very micro level of, that was the problem I had today. Well, if you let something like that happen every single day over the course of a year, you could fail completely in your business.
Yeah.
Just by letting those little bitty things slip away time after time after time. But if you do a bunch of those little bitty things right every single day, when you look back 2, 3, 5, 10 years from now, you'll have a very successful company because of or life, whatever area you're working in.
Yeah.
Because you've done a bunch of little bitty things right.
Yeah. So when you meet somebody, do you feel like you can tell whether they have an owner mentality
For sure.
or an employee mentality?
For sure. Yes. Especially just any little thing. You go eat dinner with people.
Okay.
And the waitress gets the order wrong. And it's kind of like, it's interesting to see how they react. Some people are okay with it. It's fine. I asked for, mashed potatoes and they brought me French fries. Mm-hmm. But if it's something that you really wanted, mm-hmm. but they don't want to like be uncomfortable to change and get what you wanted, like, I feel like I can apply that in my mind to, like, in a bigger situation. If you're trying to make either your physical fire, mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Successful, are you going to let some obstacle get in the way, and just because it was going to make you uncomfortable, you're not going to succeed and do well in what you wanted to do? That's always interesting to me. I mean, it's not that you're trying to be like a Karen and get on to people and over the littlest things, but if it's something that you really wanted, like I came here and I wanted to try the duck so bad because I've heard about the duck, and they ordered the duck and all of a sudden they bring them a steak.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like,
not what I asked
say
for.
Something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's a passivity.
Exactly.
Yeah, like, oh, I'm just going to take what life hands me.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's situations where you don't fire back with that kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
But it's a lot of times, to me, it's when you can tell, and it's something that you really wanted, and then something comes in the way of that. How you handle that situation is sort of it's indicative of how you would handle a much larger situation, I feel like.
Yeah. I do think there's truth to life will give you what you're willing to fight for.
Completely agree.
And that fighting, like, there was a guy that I was coaching that and you could lay out a plan for him, I'd lay out a plan for him, mm-hmm. and he just wasn't willing to take the actions to step into a plan.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, how do I check myself? Because this is why I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Like, I know I have blind spots.
For sure.
I know I have areas, and like even what you were saying about on the very micro level.
Yep.
It'd be great to say, universally, I take ownership of every single area of my life.
Right.
And I do think that when I have more of an owner mentality in my professional fire, that there's rollover into that. You're flexing that discipline muscle on some level, but there are inevitably things I would want in my relationship with my wife.
Right.
Or things I would want in my spiritual life. Man, I wish I had more. I wish I would make more time for quiet time.
Yeah.
That's such an employee mentality.
Oh, it is. It is. I mean, I
wish someone would make me study the Bible more.
You told me something one time about I can make your marriage better in like 30 seconds. And
I'm curious to hear what I said.
You said that all you had, like, before you left the house every day with your wife, hold her by the hands like you did when you stand up there on your wedding day, and look at her and say, like, love is I'm going to be patient today. I'm going to be kind. Yeah, exactly. And I was like,
to recite 1 Corinthians, but in the eye.
In the eye, because that's what on your day you said you were going to love her.
I will be kind.
Exactly.
Not be. Yeah.
And it was like, wow, that's so good. And like, how easy would that be to do? And it's like, that's not as easy as you think it is to do. Or you're just uncomfortable. And you're like, there's this, not animosity, but just this tension that's already there a little bit about things, that's going unsaid, whatever it is. And I was just like, that's a situation where I feel like I have an employee mentality and not an owner mentality. And it's kind of like, I thought I was this, I can handle everything and I'm in charge of everything in my life. And, you just give me what I need to do and I'll do it. And it's like, well, that's not exactly true. There is a blind spot, there are things that I have that employee mentality, but I do think that the first step in solving that problem is becoming aware of it, and then we talk about that all the time, the, awareness, ownership, and discipline part.
Yep.
And I think, there's a lot of those, little small things where, first come aware and ownership, but then that discipline part, there can be a little gap there.
So if you're riding down the road right now and you're listening to this and you're going, hit pause and then say out loud the area of your life that you think that you are being having a passive kind of an employee mentality in.
For sure.
And then ask, if you are you being a victim?
Right.
Like, are you letting it happen or are you pressing against it? So name it and then write down 2 or 3 things you think you could do. Try it for a couple of weeks. And if you're not winning in that space, find a guide.
Right. Exactly.
There's somebody who's winning. Like, find your Yoda, find your Obi-Wan Kenobi.
That's right.
They're going to be the ones who help Luke Skywalker win.
Yep. I agree completely.
I like that mentality. I like that line of thinking. I think it carries over in a lot of areas of our life, particularly in the professional fire.
Another way to look at employee versus ownership mentality is employees tend to leave the problems of your business that you're all there to solve. They leave them at the door or in the building when they go home at 4 or 5 o'clock. And an owner carries that with them 24/7. And, I have found that some of my best employees that I have tried to make owners and give equity and things like that, I found that they carried it home too. Before you
asked them to.
Before I asked them to. And that's, to me, that's how you can find some people that really, really care about what you're doing, what you're trying to build. And it may not necessarily be that they care about the company as much as they care about you. And they don't want to let you down, or they want to, do this and help you and things like that. And so to me, that's something else that I've seen where there's a difference between an employee mentality versus an owner mentality. It's whether or not you carry that with you. It's part of your thought process all the time.
Yeah. And the irony is that, a lot of people will say, well, I don't get paid enough to
care about
this at home.
Exactly.
And you never will.
Exactly.
Because the care has to come before the cash.
Right.
Like, the cash doesn't come if you have to pay someone to care about your business, they're the wrong person.
Agreed. There's a quote or something, I can't remember the exact words, but it talks about do more than you're paid to do so that one day you are paid more to do what you actually do.
Yeah.
And that could not be like more true, but I totally agree with that. I mean, do more than you're paid to do so that one day you will get paid to do more than what you actually do.
Mm-hmm. Get paid more than what you actually do. That's pretty good. Yeah, and it's the do comes first.
The do comes first.
Yeah, and it's that, and so a little bit it is like if we can give our kids that employee owner or that owner mentality of like, look, whatever you do, you own it.
Exactly.
You know, there's a biblical principle of like do all things as though working for the Lord. Yeah. You know, like this is if we'll do that first, it'll all work out.
Exactly.
Well, thank you, Justin, for being a part of that podcast. I enjoyed our conversation there. Four Fires Tribe, if you are thinking about your employee versus owner mentality, name that area. Name the area that you're kind of stuck in being a victim in, and make a shift to be the hero in that space. If you're really stuck, find a guide. One of the places that you can go to find a guide, and Justin, we were talking about this earlier, is in the tribe.
Yep.
So the Four Fires Tribe is filled with a community of people who are committed to living four-dimensionally. If what you're stuck in is in the physical fire, go jump into that physical fire chat room and ask a question. And there are people who know how to pull the levers there.
Yep. I think one of the things that attracts me to the idea of it is I feel like we all want to be led, and I feel like we all want to lead. There's a part of us that want to lead in certain areas. There's a part of us that want to be led in certain areas. And I think that's what's really good about getting a group of people together is that there's a lot of people that are good at one thing that are not good in another. And there's somebody that's in that group that's good in that area that you're lacking in. Yeah. And so I feel like it creates an environment where you get to lead and be led all at the same time. And, as iron sharpens iron, so does one man sharpen another.
For sure. Yeah. I think that is a neat. Well, it is the purpose of the tribe,
for sure.
Right. So jump on to the tribe. There's a link in the description of this podcast for you to become a part of the Four Fires Tribe. It's free, so jump in and be a part of that conversation in that community. Justin, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Really enjoyed it. Live intentionally.